have officially transferred ownership of our house to my parents as we grapple with the possibility of divorce. Henry, with an icy demeanor, pointed at me, coldly demanding that I leave our home while hurling a barrage of insults. His parents stood by, their approving smiles suggesting they silently endorsed his behavior. Despite their harsh words, I remained calm, my resolve unshaken. I had prepared meticulously for this moment. With my bags packed and a clear plan in mind, I walked out of the house without a second thought, leaving them oblivious to the significant repercussions that awaited them. My name is Amy, and I recently celebrated my 45th birthday. It's been many years since Henry and I exchanged vows. Our children have grown and forged their own independent lives away from home. I once held an ordinary job, but thanks to a friend's introduction, I now spend my days teaching others how to create handmade accessories. This shift from hobby to profession has been a transformative moment in my life, filling my days with fulfillment through my interactions with students and the joy of crafting. While some might question the wisdom of turning a hobby into a career, I find immense satisfaction in it. Henry and I met by chance at my previous workplace, where he was connected with a client company. Our frequent encounters at work-related events deepened our connection, and we eventually fell in love and married. After 4 years, we were blessed with a lively son who has since graduated from a prestigious university and is now happily married. However, despite our son's achievements, the relationship between Henry and me has faced its share of challenges. Over the years, Henry underwent a drastic transformation. The gentle, caring man I married began to reveal a harsher side, growing increasingly demanding and treating me more like a servant than a partner. His expectations and moods shifted like the wind, turning our home into a battleground over trivial matters. His verbal outbursts escalated, and I yearned for a fresh start away from this chaos. Yet, an unpaid mortgage kept me tethered to our current situation. To complicate matters, Henry inexplicably quit his job and has since spent his days idly at home, contributing nothing to the household chores. This left me to shoulder all the responsibilities alone. The house we live in holds deep significance for me. I financed its recent reconstruction with my savings. It stands as a testament to my dreams and efforts, a space built from my vision and hard work. The kitchen, spacious and meticulously designed, reflects my taste. While Henry had some input in the layout, I ultimately covered all expenses and insisted that my preferences be prioritized. Building this house was both a challenge and a joy. It embodies everything I hoped for. Yet, the financial burden turned out to be more than we had anticipated, forcing us into a larger loan than expected. Taking on such a significant financial obligation in our 40s felt daunting, but the promise of happiness in our new home gave us the strength to manage this debt. Still, Henry appeared dissatisfied. His ideas were only minimally represented in the final design, and he frequently voiced his displeasure, dismissing the expenses as wasteful and akin to throwing money away. Despite his grievances, I focused on the joy and fulfillment our new home provided. Choosing to overlook his discontent, I persevered through his complaints, but gradually, he withdrew from communicating with me, resorting instead to childish antics like littering and leaving messes to irritate me. I often found myself wondering when this cycle of conflict would finally come to an end. As these thoughts swirled through my mind, a few months had passed since we moved into our new home when unexpectedly, the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting visitors, which piqued my curiosity. Just as I approached to answer, Henry jumped up, seemingly recognizing who it might be. Moments later, cheerful voices and laughter wafted through the entrance. When the living room door swung open, I was taken aback to see my in-laws, Willie and Catherine. Our relationship had always been strained. They had been cold and critical of my background from the moment we announced our marriage, maintaining an awkward distance even on our wedding day. Their sporadic visits post-marriage always left me uncertain about how to navigate each encounter. Despite the lack of recent contact, their sudden arrival caught me off guard. I greeted them politely, though a tension lingered in the air. They brushed past me in silence, deliberately ignoring me and even bumping into my shoulder as they entered the house. They admired the spacious and well-designed kitchen, and Henry, basking in their attention, proudly guided them around. Upon their return, Henry's parents wore satisfied expressions, but Henry's demeanor shifted abruptly. He turned to me, his voice loud and stern, commanding me to quickly prepare tea and snacks. Taken aback by his sudden outburst, I hurried to fulfill his request, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me as I set about making the refreshments. Despite my efforts to be hospitable, it was clear that his parents were dissatisfied. Willie quickly finished his snacks and tea, offering only a cursory compliment on the interior of the house. Amid this, Henry, beaming with pride, casually invited his parents to move in with us, hardly acknowledging my presence as they listened and then left. I stood back, watching their departing figures. The chasm between Henry and me felt insurmountable, especially seeing him so animated and joyful with his parents, a side of him I hadn't witnessed in a long time. Following Henry's invitation, his parents began visiting our house more frequently. What started as a few times a month quickly escalated to several times a week, and eventually nearly every day. With each visit, their criticisms of me became increasingly unrelenting, and Henry did nothing to discourage them. He directed his blame towards me, insisting that I was the source of our son's distress. As the challenges mounted, I found myself unable to voice my growing frustration, resorting instead to apologies. The in-laws often came over when I was out, leaving clear signs of their presence: beer cans, empty bottles, and spills that stained our new rug with alcohol. Despite my objections, our home began to smell of booze and felt increasingly chaotic. Ironically, Henry's complaints about my contributions to the household stung, especially since he did nothing to help. His gambling habit added another layer of stress. Betting slips frequently appeared, underscoring the financial risks and rendering any attempts to explain the dangers futile. The losses were particularly painful, as the money squandered was hard-earned from my exhaustive efforts. As the visits from the in-laws became more regular, they began to choose their times strategically. Being away made it increasingly difficult for me to manage the chaos in our home or assert any control over the uncomfortable atmosphere that was unfolding. One day, I returned home earlier than expected to find Henry and his parents leisurely enjoying themselves in the living room. Taken aback, I confronted them, but their dismissive replies and snarky attitudes made it clear that my presence was an annoyance to them. Frustrated and stressed by their insolence, I realized I had reached my breaking point. Instead of succumbing to my emotions, I decided to devise a plan to address the situation effectively. Amid this ongoing turmoil, an unexpected incident occurred on a day I usually spent away from home. The in-laws showed up unannounced, and their palpable surprise at finding me there led me to make a sarcastic remark about their usual avoidance of me. They ignored my comment and confidently strolled into the house. Henry greeted them with a warm smile and eagerly began to give them a tour from the kitchen to the bathroom. As I watched their thorough inspection, suspicion crept in. It felt as though there was a hidden agenda behind their visit. When they left, their satisfied expressions hinted they had confirmed something significant. My curiosity piqued. I couldn't help but wonder what necessitated such a detailed inspection and if they were keeping something from me. I had previously warned Henry not to delve into my concerns, making it clear that my feelings were none of his business. Yet, his behavior suggested he was hiding something. I suspected he was trying to manipulate the situation, though pinpointing his exact intentions was challenging. Observing the unfolding drama became my only option. Then one day after work, I returned home to a shocking sight: a large moving truck emblazoned with the logo "Moving Center" parked in front of our house. Henry was deep in conversation with the driver and several representatives. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away and hurried back inside. To my astonishment, my in-laws arrived simultaneously, greeting me casually as if nothing was wrong. Henry welcomed them with open arms, ushering them into the house, and the tension in the air was palpable, signaling that significant changes were imminent in our living situation. As I followed them inside, I was struck by a dramatic transformation. The familiar furnishings and personal items that had once filled our home were gone, replaced by my in-laws' outdated furniture, arranged as though they already lived there. I sat down on the sofa, surrounded by their smirking smiles, which radiated smugness. Their behavior suggested that this change was not spontaneous but part of a carefully orchestrated plan. Feeling a mix of anxiety and resolve, I chose to remain silent and observe what would unfold next. The anxious glances exchanged between my in-laws only intensified the tense atmosphere. Soon, they hinted at something important they needed to discuss, suggesting a hidden agenda. Bracing myself and maintaining a facade of calm, I listened as Henry took a deep breath and disclosed that he had sold the house to his parents. He then proposed we get a divorce, to which his parents nodded in agreement, their smirking smiles betraying their delight at manipulating the situation. Despite the shocking revelation, I remained composed. Having suspected their scheming, I swiftly signed the divorce papers, placed my wedding ring on the table, and announced my decision to leave. My suspicions about Henry and his parents' deceitful behavior, especially during their frequent visits in my absence, had led me to take precautionary measures. I had installed surveillance cameras around the house, accessible via my smartphone. Initially, I monitored their casual interactions, but it wasn't long before I stumbled upon footage that confirmed my worst fears. In the video, Henry and his parents were seen joyfully discussing the sale of the house. Shocked but now fully aware of their intentions, I began to carefully plan my next steps. Based on the evidence I had gathered, I started searching for a new place to live, ready to move on from this betrayal. Taking decisive action, I initiated the transfer of the home loan from my name to Henry's. If they intended to oust me from our shared home, it seemed only fair that they should take on the mortgage payments and all associated responsibilities. The monthly mortgage payment was $3,800, a significant sum drawn from my hard-earned salary. I had serious doubts that Henry and his parents, given their current employment situations, could handle this financial burden. Resolved to sever all financial ties, I offered no support. Now free from the strains of that relationship, I moved into a new home, neatly arranged and furnished with new items, eager to start afresh. On a peaceful day off, luxuriating in the bliss of sleeping well past noon, My relaxation was suddenly shattered by the doorbell. To my shock, I found Henry and his parents standing on my doorstep, uninvited and unexpected. They barged in without waiting for an invitation, spreading a document before me and accusing me of illegally altering the loan terms without their permission. I was taken aback by their audacity. They explained that shortly after I had left the old house, they had received notification about the change in the loan's name. All three of them, currently unemployed, were visibly stunned and claimed they couldn't afford the hefty monthly payments. In a heated outburst, Henry insisted they would not cover the payments. Trying to reason with them, I explained the potential consequences of defaulting on the loan, including how interest and late fees could drastically increase their financial burden. Henry listened, initially skeptical, but I could see the reality of the situation beginning to sink in. After he looked up the loan information online, his expression shifted to one of shock and distress. I suggested it might be time for them to seek new employment opportunities for a fresh start. Their faces went pale as the gravity of their situation dawned on them. They confessed to having no savings or assets. With Henry weighed down by substantial gambling debts and lacking stable income, they pleaded for understanding and assistance. Referencing the years we had spent together, unmoved by their appeals, I firmly closed the door, eager to distance myself from any attempts to salvage our past relationship. Frustrated, they reported me to the police, which ultimately resulted in their removal from my property. Due to their financial struggles, they eventually relocated to a more affordable apartment on the outskirts of town, where Henry managed to secure a part-time job to support his family. Meanwhile, my life continued without disruption. I focused on my job and, in my spare time, started a blog about handmade crafts. The blog gained traction, leading to a substantial increase in my monthly income as requests for workshops and courses poured in. I had no desire to remarry. I was determined to navigate life on my own terms. One day, while going through some old belongings, I stumbled upon a household account book from the early days of my marriage. As I flipped through its pages, memories of our financial struggles came rushing back. Fueled by a renewed sense of determination, I resolved to forge a new path toward happiness independently. After reflecting on the past, I placed the account book back on the shelf, ready to focus on building a fulfilling future.